All right, good afternoon. I am now calling to order the first meeting of the Public Safety and Administration Committee for 2022. I am Delegate Tony Bridges, the new chair of the Public Safety and Administration Committee. And with me, I have my colleagues, Vice Chair Delegate Proctor. I also have Delegate Osvero, as well as Delegate McKay. And I just want to first take the personal privilege to thank all my members for being here and supporting me as the new chair of the Public Safety Committee. I look forward to working with you all this year, as well as working with our staff, Mr. Ken Weaver, and all of our analysts as well. And so we're excited to get started. We've got a good group that we're going to talk to today. We got a set of agencies from State Archives, Subsequent Injuries Fund, the Workers' Compensation Commission, as well as the Secretary of State. And I am actually going to go a little bit out of order because our secretary has to get over to the Senate for another hearing. And I'm going to start with the budget analyst for the Secretary of State, Madeline Miller. And from there, once Madeline is done, I'll ask my members if you have any questions. Please raise your hand and I'll be sure to call on you. And from there, then we'll go to the Honorable John C. Walton-Smith, who will answer any questions that we may have as well. So with that, Madeline, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to share my screen now. Can you all see a PDF? Great. My name is Madeline Miller, and I will be presenting my analysis for the Office of the Secretary of State. Beginning with their operating budget summary, this shows that the fiscal 2023 budget decreases $1.1 million, or about 23%. The total allowance is $3.8 million. I have one item to note from fiscal 2022. The office received about $370,000 in American Rescue Plan Act funds through a budget amendment in fiscal 22. These funds are intended to replace reimbursable funds from the Governor's Office of Crime Prevention, Youth and Victim Services. The ARPA funds will be used to support the Address Confidentiality Program, which provides victims of domestic violence and human trafficking with a free, confidential mail forwarding service. These funds will be general funds in fiscal 23. Moving to the overview of agency spending further down on page 2. This pie chart shows that the majority of the office's $3.8 million covers personnel expenses at about 85% total. Cost allocations make up the next largest portion at 7%, and contractual services make up about 3% of the budget in fiscal 23, which is a decline. The figure was 12% in last year's analysis. Then Exhibit 2 on page 3 shows changes in the proposed budget from the working appropriation to the allowance. The allowance decreases by $1.1 million, with the difference in funds largely being split between general, federal, and reimbursable fund sources. The largest change in the budget, down at the bottom, comes from the completion of funding for the electronic filing system replacement and the notarization database to enable remote notarization. The completion of funding for these replacements is responsible for the smaller portion of funds being used for contractual services that I mentioned on the previous page. The replacement and upgrade of the notary database is required to process notary application forms online. Funding for this purpose had previously been extended to fiscal 2022 by the Board of Public Works last summer. On page 4, I have information relating to personnel detail. There are no changes from fiscal 21 to fiscal 23 for regular personnel. Further conversations with DBM and the office suggests that the number of full-time equivalent positions in the working appropriation is overstated. However, the change in FTEs from fiscal 22 to 23 and the associated funding difference would then be overstated as well. My first observation appears on page 5. Exhibit 3 shows how participation in the address confidentiality program has grown, as well as the number of applicant assistants each year, and the number of participants who are re-enrolling. Program participation grew about 19% from fiscal 20 to fiscal 21. The program re-enrollment decreased about 39% in the same period. Both measurements tend to fluctuate, but eligibility for the program was recently expanded to cover survivors of threatened, attempted, or actual domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, harassment, or human trafficking, as well as individuals who reside in the same household as an eligible applicant or program participant. Then Exhibit 4 on page 6 shows the number of notary public commissions from fiscal 2017 through fiscal 21. The Charities and Legal Services Division is responsible for processing applications and regulating and renewing commissions for notaries public. The number processed grew 32% from fiscal 20 to 21. Commissions are valid for 4 years, but an executive order extended the expiration of certain state licenses and registrations to July 30th, 2021, which was 30 days following the termination of the governor's declared state of emergency and catastrophic health emergency. The final observation relates to the charitable organizations and the number of charitable organizations registered and the number of charitable delinquencies. The governor's executive order, which extended certain state licenses, is also relevant in this case. The number of charities has continued to trend upward since fiscal 2016, reaching over 16,000 in fiscal 2021, after decreasing about 50.6% between fiscal 2016 and 2019. The number of delinquent charities increased almost 54% in fiscal 2020 to 1,814. It decreased again in fiscal 21, however. The office reports that decreased enforcement actions taken in fiscal 21 were the result of a temporary shift in priorities caused by the pandemic and by a vacancy in the only investigator position during the beginning of fiscal 21. But just noting again that there were many charities that were in good standing when the emergency order was activated. And these charities would also have been exempt until the order ended on July 30th. DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I will stop sharing my screen.
All right, thank you very much, Madeline. Great job. Does any of the members have any questions for the analyst?
No, sir.
If not, we will move to, oh, I'm sorry, Delegate Vice Chair Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just am asking for a simple explanation. When we saw the positions and their vacancies, there was a not applicable. What's the rationale for that?
Sure. The not applicable, normally that number is the difference between the numbers directly above it. So I believe the two numbers, the turnover and necessary vacancies for the office is currently set at 0. And there were 0 vacancies within the office at that time. So it's written as not applicable because you can't subtract from 0 to get to or you can't subtract anything in order to see how many vacancies are above or below the set turnover rate.
So if I just said to you, do you have any vacancies? What would your answer be?
No,
No vacancies.
no vacancies.
Okay, fully staffed. Thank you.
It's good to hear. Any other questions from our members? If not, Mr. Secretary, I'm not sure if you have a presentation, but the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. By the way, I want to thank the chair because he very kindly called me ahead of time, and he and I had not met before. So I appreciate that very much. And we had a great conversation. And I'm very proud of our organization, I would tell you. We have across the board from each one of our areas of responsibility, we have a 99+% customer satisfaction across the whole organization. And I'm really proud of my folks because, you know, in spite of the COVID making things a little bit more difficult for everybody, our folks came through and just have done a marvelous job. And the end of last year, we received, our organization received national recognition from the Service to the Citizens organization that's located in Washington. And we were one of the only states that received the Customer Satisfaction Award from the organization. So we're very proud of that. Our folks worked very, very hard. And I do have with me my senior members of our organization are also on if there's any specific questions that anybody would like to delve into. But as I said, we have a good organization. We're very happy that the ELF system is now being replaced because I was very concerned about that one. And we're with the modernization of both the charities and notaries databases, that's going to make a big difference for us and also for our customers because it makes life a lot easier and it lets us do more things. So on our charity, for example, in our charity organization, we're going after the bad guys all the time. And we do stop orders, we do investigations, and we've gotten rid of some really bad actors here in the state that have been taking monies away from our citizens. So, and there's more that we could be doing there. So I'm really happy about that. And just as the final note, we would ask, oh, one other thing I did want to mention, Ms. Miller did a great job. She was great to work with, and she obviously understood some very complex things in a very short period of time. So we appreciate that very much. And we do ask for concurrence in the governor's presentation.
Great, thank you for that, Mr. Secretary. I also want to just thank Ms. Miller for pulling all this information together for us as well. Hey, I do have one question, just because I'm not really familiar with the reason for it, but the address confidentiality program, obviously re-enrollment is never as high as enrollment is for that program, but I'm just not sure what the reason is someone would need to re-enroll. If you could explain that to me.
I'm going to let Brittany Laurie. Brittany, are you on? I think you're on.
Yes, I'm on. My video's not working, unfortunately. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you. Yep.
Great. So our participation is for 4 years, and participants are encouraged to re-enroll as every 4 years, as long as they still need the program. So if their perpetrator is in prison, sometimes they'll get out of the program. If there's been a death, if they feel safe, they'll leave the program. Otherwise, they will re-enroll every 4 years until they no longer need the program.
Got it. Thank you. I was assuming that people needed to re-enroll every year, but that reason makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Thank you.
And just one other comment too. One of the things that occurred now 2 years ago was to allow people to buy property in the state unanimously, so under protection of the program. And we now have 41 people in the last 18 months that have have taken advantage of that program. It's gone well beyond anything we expected. We expected maybe 5 or 6 a year, but we're up to 41 in 18 months. So that's really remarkable. And it's really worked well. And the clerks of the court, and particularly the Anne Arundel County clerk, has been really helpful in making this all work.
Good.
So it's taken a lot of cooperation across the state and with many different entities involved. As you can imagine, mortgagees, the banks, all of them are play an integral role in this, in protecting people. So it's worked really well. So I want to compliment the legislature on expanding that program out. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from any of the members? If not, we have no one signed up to do public comment for any of the agencies today. So with that, Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you and your staff for your participation today, and look forward to working with you in the future. You are now free to go over to the Senate, and we'll talk about that Senate side a little bit later.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. We appreciate it a lot. Thank you.
Thank you. And that'll end the hearing on the Secretary of State's office. With that, we will move on to State Archives, and we will have Caleb Weiss give us the analysis for the State Archives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Can everyone see the PDF document now? So starting here with the budget summary for State Archives, in fiscal 2023, the budget increased by 271,000 or 3 percentage points to a total of 9.2 million. Moving forward, here we have an overview of the State Archives budget. As you can see, 72% of the budget is spent on personnel expenses, with the next 2 largest categories being rent and insurance and contractual services and fees at 11% and 9% respectively. Moving forward, in Exhibit 2, we have the changes to the budget in the fiscal 2023 allowance. The largest here are in the personnel section, where you have reclassifications, health insurance, and retiree health insurance premiums. We also have a decrease in regular earnings down here. The largest non-personnel change to the budget is 151,000 for data processing equipment expenses. On Exhibit 3, we're going to start the MFR section. Here we have the collections material, which is the physical collections, and then we have the electronic data and the database records. Since fiscal 2017, you've seen an increase in all 3 of these type of collection materials. The next exhibit, Exhibit 4, we have the State Archives also manages the state-owned art collection. And you can see that in fiscal 2021, this State Archives added 5 new pieces to the art collection, and they placed 7 additional items on display. That's the blue bar here is the items on public display. Right here, before we get to Exhibit 5, DLS asked the State Archives comment on any considerations being given to the expansion of online access and programming, considering the decline in more traditional program opportunities during the pandemic. And you can see that in Exhibit 5, starting in fiscal 2019 and continuing through 2021 and projected for 2022, a dramatic decline in the number of public programs due to the impacts of COVID-19. And then on the next page, DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance, and that's all I have today. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Caleb. Good job. Does anyone have any questions for the budget analyst? If not, then I will turn this over to Ms. Elaine Bachmann. Thank you for joining us today. The floor is yours, and I understand you have some staff if you want to introduce them to the members as well.
I certainly will, Mr. Chairman and members. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you today, and congratulations on your new chairmanship. It seems we are both debuting in new roles today. And I was also the recipient of that kind phone call this week. So I really am grateful for that opportunity to meet you. I am Elaine Bachmann. I am the state archivist, and also attending with me today are Teresa Fawley, who is the Archives Director of Administration, and Liz Coelho, who is our Director of Special Projects, who also serves as our legislative liaison. I want to thank Caleb Weiss for his excellent analysis. Caleb is new to our agency, and I particularly appreciate his time in coming to meet with us personally here in Annapolis at our main building and to meet some of our staff in person. So really appreciate your familiarization with our agency and your excellent analysis. And I really could not let this opportunity pass, since it is my first budget hearing as state archivist, to say what an honor it is to lead the agency where I have spent my career, and how proud I am to represent all of the state archive staff, so many of whom have been my colleagues for the past 3 decades or some portion of that time. And what a great responsibility and challenge it is to continue the work of my predecessors and mentors, Dr. Edward Pappenfuss and Tim Baker. You have written testimony from me, so of course I'll refrain from reading that and only summarize to say that we're very pleased by the governor's allowance, because it restores critical funding in a couple of key areas, one of which is personnel. Just having that restoration of funds, I feel like we're being made whole by being able to fill vacancies. We're so gratified by just this past month welcoming 4 new employees to the archives, and that was filling vacancies that had either been there since before the pandemic, were created due to retirements, but it's really just sort of bringing us whole, relieving some of those pressure points. We were able to pivot very quickly to remote operations. We're of course now fully back open to the public, but the only way we could do that was because of the strength of our staff and the foundation of our electronic records, which again is another part of the restoration of the governor's allowance. Restoring some funds to information technology. That really is the backbone of everything we do, having that ability to provide remote access, to make accessible digital records, and of course to pay great attention to cybersecurity, which is on everyone's mind now. And we're currently working with Department of Information Technology on a full security assessment, like all agencies are. And it's just very gratifying to have our equipment up to date and feel like we're really fully prepared to address all of the concerns that might be there. I will also mention, some of you know that my background is with the state's art collection, so having that moderate amount of money restored for art conservation is so important. I'm keenly aware of how even a small amount of funding goes a long way in making art accessible to the public in some of our main areas, such as the State House and throughout the offices in which you all work. And finally, just to comment on the public programming, it's interesting, we pivoted like everyone to remote programming, and we have a very successful partnership now with the Enoch Pratt Library to have a virtual lecture series over the lunchtime, one a month. So we haven't been able to have as many in-person programs. We are certainly going to ramp those back up as we can. But in terms of how many people are attending our programs, by shifting to that virtual format, I mean, we've had lectures where there have been 1,000 people on attending. So it's an interesting balance. Of course, we want to welcome people here. There's nothing that can replace really in-person instruction in how to use our records and access our records. But in terms of reaching people with interpretive lectures and presentations, that's been a benefit to have that virtual platform. So with that, I will answer any questions anyone has, and thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you saying all that. I do have one question before I turn it over in terms of the I guess virtual sort of displays. You said that you had gone to doing a lecture series, but are any of the I guess artwork or any of the collections also available to just view online?
Absolutely. We have an online catalog of the state's art collection where you can look up by either medium, by artist, by subject to see portraits, works of art, decorative arts. We also have a website for the State House that includes a virtual tour of the State House that we've partnered with the Department of Legislative Services on. So yes, there's lots of information available for those who are looking.
Great. Thank you very much. Do the members have any questions as well? Seeing none, I just want to thank you once again for your presentation today, and you just have yourself a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. And that will end the hearing for State Archives. We will move to Subsequent Injuries Fund. And with that, I will ask Jason Kramer if you can give us the analysis for the budget for Subsequent Injuries Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will share my screen here for you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Jason Kramer. I'm here to present the budget analysis for the Subsequent Injury Fund. The SIF compensates injured workers whose pre-existing injuries are substantially worsened by current injury. I will start at the operating budget summary. The fund's operating budget increases by 2.4% to $2.6 million in fiscal 2020 in the fiscal 2023 allowance. Exhibit 1 here shows how that funding is spread out across the agency. 83% is spent on personnel, with another 10% of the allowance on contractual services. Exhibit 2 shows the proposed budgets and the changes to the proposed budget and the changes in the proposed budget compared to fiscal 2022. The largest change is an increase of about $47,000 for a new contractual position. That new contractual position was hired in response to repeat audit findings that pointed out some delinquent accounts were not being sent to collections, and that's being handled by that contractual employee. Exhibit 3 shows the agency's assessment revenue since fiscal 2016. SIF receives special funds from an assessment on awards against employers for permanent disability or death. As you can see, there was a dip in the amount of revenue to the fund in fiscal 2021. Legislation passed 2 years ago temporarily reduced the size of the assessment from 6.5% to 5.5% for fiscal 2021 only. As you can see here in Exhibit 3, fiscal 21 assessment revenues were about $22.8 million, or $4.6 million lower than the prior year. But as you can see, estimated revenue for fiscal years 22 and 23 are expected to return to near prior levels. Exhibit 4, that assessment revenue is used to provide funding for the Subsequent Injury Fund. As you can see, there's been consistent growth in the fund since fiscal 2010 and prior. The estimated closing balance for fiscal 2022 estimates the fund will close with about $111 million. The most recent actuarial study that was issued in 2016 found that SIF had unfunded liabilities of between, had liabilities of between 195 million and 385 million, depending on different assumptions that were used. DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance, and with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions for Mr. Kramer? Seeing none, I will now turn it over to our executive director, Mr. Dodd, and I know you also have Ms. Rose Hunt with you. So Mr. Dodd, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to add to the chorus of appreciation for the phone call. That it was a good talk and something that I've never experienced. And I thank you so much for setting that precedent.
No problem.
It's my honor every day to lead the 17 other folks at the Subsequent Injury Fund. Our folks as other state agencies have responded incredibly to the COVID crisis, and we've been able to carry on our service, if you will, to injured and disabled Maryland workers during this crisis. I appreciate very much Mr. Kramer's analysis. We certainly concur with the governor's recommendation, and we respectfully request the committee to act favorably on it.
All right. Does any committee members have any questions? I am seeing none. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your time being here. Please have a good rest of the afternoon.
Thank you so much. Stay well.
You do the same.
Bye-bye.
So that'll end the budget hearing for the Subsequent Injuries Fund. We will now hear from Workers' Compensation Commission. Mr. Kramer, if you can give us the budget analysis.
All right, I'm still here to present this time on the Workers' Compensation Commission budget analysis. The commission administers the state's workers' compensation law. And I'll start on this first chart, the summary of the operating budget. The fiscal 2023 allowance increases by just under 8% or $1.5 million to $20.3 million in special funds. Exhibit 1 shows the breakdown of agency spending. About 58% of agency spending in fiscal 23 is on personnel, with another 21% on the case management system, which is an IT project that is revamping the commission's IT processes. Exhibit 2 shows the proposed budget and the changes between fiscal 22 and 23. The largest change between the two fiscal years, as you can see, is about a $1.2 million increase in special funds for the CompHub case management system. And as I mentioned earlier, that's an IT project that is revamping processes at the Workers' Compensation Commission. The next exhibit I'll show is personnel data. As you can see here, there are 17 vacant positions as of this month, out of 115 regular authorized positions in the fiscal 22 working appropriation. That's nearly 4 times as many as is required under the current budgeted turnover rate. And then I will move on to the key observations section. The first issue is delays that have been caused primarily by COVID. The goal of the commission is to set 90% of hearings within 60 days of the filing date. As you can see here in Exhibit 3, in fiscal 2021, only 39% of hearings were set within 60 days, primarily due to difficulties scheduling hearings due to COVID. And finally, Exhibit 4 shows the calculation used to come to the assessment on employers that is used to fund both the operations of the Workers' Compensation Commission as well as the Occupational Safety and Health Program. The total assessment in fiscal 2021 decreased slightly, but the payroll base increased by nearly $20 billion, about 16%, which meant that the formula-based assessment rate, this bottom right-hand number, decreased to only 20.6 cents per $1,000 of payroll. DLS recommends concurring with the governor's allowance. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Do have one quick question in regard to the 17 vacancies. Do you know, and this may be more for the agency, but do you know if those are new vacancies, as a result of retirement or, the pandemic?
I don't have that information right in front of me, no.
Yep, gotcha. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions for our analysts? If not, thank you very much, Mr. Kramer. I will now turn this over to Chairman Almond. Thank you so very much for being here today. I know you have some staff with you as well. If you want to start off and introduce your staff, and then we'll ask questions of you afterwards. You're on mute.
Thank you.
There you go.
I wasn't sure if I muted me or if I was muted by somebody else, but thanks. It's a pleasure to be here and thank you so much. I would like to welcome my colleagues, Mary Ahern, our Chief Executive Officer, David Jones, our Chief Financial Officer, and James Moore, our Head of Fiscal Services. They are key folks in the preparation of our budget, and glad to have them today to help back me up on anything that I don't know. I would like to answer the one question that you had about the vacancies. We've been hit hard by retirements. The agency has a lot of older folks who decided to take advantage of retirement. Unfortunately, many at once. But we have I believe only one of those 17 positions is older than a year, and it's an IT position that's been a little bit difficult to fill with lack of a good response. But we've been actively pursuing a good candidate for the job, and we have probably in excess of 14 active searches going on right now for personnel. It's a lot of work, but we're happy with the progress. We're happy with where we're going, and thankfully, due to cross training and the quality of our staff, we've been able to fill in with a lot of the other responsibilities for folks who have retired. It's an honor to be here. This is my 17th year at the commission. It is an amazingly terrific group of folks. They are talented and committed, and they are just really wonderful people, really doing a great job. I would like to point out the one thing about the pandemic in terms of our performance. When we closed for the 3 months back in 2020 due to the total shutdown, we reopened in June with a different schedule of cases that reduced the number of cases that we were able to hear. But at the time of the closure, we had 10,000 cases that we had in our backlog. And obviously, because we were closed for 3 months, almost all of them were over, had hearings that needed to be set over our normal 60-day turnaround. I'm really proud to report that as of our numbers today, we have less than 3,000 cases that need to be set, and less than 900 of them are due over 60 days. So we're really pleased with the progress that we've been able to make on getting hearings set. And unlike most other branches of the judiciary, we have continued since June of 2020 to have in-person and virtual hearings. That's allowed us to really attack this backlog and make sure that injured workers and the employers community have access to getting the questions answered about workplace injuries. So that's been yeoman's work, but we're really pleased with the way that's gone. And the only other thing I'd like to point out is that the agency is totally funded by assessments on insurance companies. All the insurance companies who write workers' comp policies in the state receive a prorated assessment that covers the operations of the agency. And we are very careful stewards of that money, regardless of where it comes from. But we are very careful with that and happy that it doesn't come from general tax revenue, but it comes from the community whom we serve in the state. And with that, I would like to ask the committees, we agree with the concurrence and would ask the committee's approval of that concurrence. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your report. Does anybody else have any questions? So, Mr. Chair, just for my knowledge, though, in terms of, you talked about the backlog, you went from 10,000 down to less than 3,000 cases that need to be heard, whether it's in person or virtual. What's a normal, is anything normal really this time around, but what's a normal sort of caseload that you would like to see the agency at?
We are almost back to normal. We issue 25 in a normal year. We issue between 20 and 25,000 orders. There are only 10 of us, 10 commissioners, and we hear a lot of cases every day. Every docket has between 20 and 25 cases set on it. So we go through a lot of them. And we're very careful to make sure that those numbers, the ones that are over 60, are paid attention to very quickly, so we can get the folks decided. And some of them have to be postponed for reasons that we don't have any control over, which we don't have any control.
Yeah.
But I'm quite frankly happy with where we are right now with those numbers. That's almost normal.
Got it. All right. Does anyone else have any questions? All right. Seeing none, oh, wait a minute. Delegate Proctor. Vice Chair Proctor, you on mute.
I really just want to make one comment. You were talking about the fact that you have 10 commissioners and, you're right now, you're battling, trying to get back to normal. Is that a limit? Is that the maximum number of commissioners you can have, or what dictates that?
Yes, Madam Vice Chair, that is set by statute. The 10 is what we've had for quite a long time, and we think that's sufficient. If we had to go and increase our the number of cases that we need to hear, we could do that with the number of folks we have. It's a very efficient process, and we've got good, smart folks. These judges are really high quality people who know their work and are able to get it done in short order.
I think you said, but I didn't write it down. What is a load under normal circumstances? What is your caseload?
Each commissioner, every day, because when every day a commissioner is working, we have a hearing set for that person unless it's a meeting. But it's usually between 20 and 25 cases a day.
And does that mean that with that 20 to 25 a day for your commissioners, that you are able to hear all the cases that are available, or are you still working with the backlog when you're doing this 20 to 25 a day?
That is, we're back up from when we had a more limited schedule during 2021. We only had about 14 cases a day heard per commissioner because we had to space them all out to allow the physical distancing and the rest. We've loosened that up a little bit and are back up to the 25 right now. That's normal.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else have any questions? If not, Chairman Almond, we appreciate your time today and that of your staff. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you again for being in touch with us ahead of time. Great call.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that will end the work of the subcommittee for today. Members, just stay close to your emails for our next subcommittee hearing. You should have the schedule already, and we will definitely be in touch. If there are no more questions, comments, then thank you very much. You all have yourself a great afternoon.
Mr. Chair, just real quick, kudos to you. Great job on handling today's hearing. We appreciate it. And Vice Chair Proctor, good to see you.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Take
All
care.
right.
Well, that's the last time you're going to hear it.
I appreciate it. You all have a good evening.
All right. Good evening.
All right.